President Buhari presides over first virtual meeting of Federal Executive Council after 2 months. Approves amendment of 2020 Appropriation Act.
The revised budget is now in the total sum of 10.523 trillion, a difference of just about 71.5 billion when compared to the approved budget.
Reactions as President Buhari appoints Professor Ibrahim Gambari as new Chief of Staff.
House leadership inaugurates committee to investigate abandoned federal government assets in parts of the country.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall revisit COVID-19 situation reports from the states in part 6 of our series. Now, 10 weeks after the first confirmed case of coronavirus in the country, Nigeria, of course, is faced with the stark realities of an exponential increase in number of infections. This worrisome development has already placed the country as 6th on the continent and 1st on the chart in West Africa.
At close of day, May 13, cases of COVID-19 stood at 4,971, with 184 new cases, while the number of discharged patients and deaths stood at 1,070 and 164 respectively. 34 states, including the FCT, are plagued with the pandemic, leaving Kogi and Cross River State coronavirus-free, as indicated in the NCDC report.
Now, indeed, Kirian, for about 5 weeks running now, particularly on Thursdays, the Good Boy Nigeria program has been assessing responses from various states with regard to how they are dealing with the pandemic. Last week certainly was no exception, as we engaged guests from Nasarawa, Imo, the Federal Capital Territory, as well as the Chief Executive of the Guild of Medical Directors.
The Executive Governor of Nasarawa State, Abdullahi Sule, lamenting the increase in number of cases, insists that the relaxation of the lockdown in the Federal Capital Territory, as well as the high incidence risk of receiving more than 100 Almajiris from Bauchi State, are part of the challenges the state has to contend with.
Now, we also had Professor Morris, who joined us from Owerri, the Imo State capital. And he said at the time there were 2 cases that had been recorded in the state. But he was optimistic of the readiness of the state government to contain the virus with 5 isolation centers across the state and the anticipation of at least 100 bed spaces at the state teaching hospital.
And meanwhile, the chairman, FCT Task Force on COVID-19, Atta Iharu, railed out the various efforts at enforcing the presidential guidelines on ease of the lockdown in the FCT. He explained the precarious situation of non-compliance to the guidelines, especially on interstate movement, social distancing, and adherence to neighborhood markets operating on the stipulated days.
Now, one of the guests who was with us, Professor Olufemi Babalola, who is of the Guild of Medical Directors, stressed the need for government to equip private hospitals to enable them cope with the burden of COVID-19 cases. And thankfully, this has received positive response from the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19.
Now, in the last 48 hours, sub-national entities have been taking drastic steps to curb the spread of the virus, from extension of partial lockdown, closure of livestock markets, to stiffer penalties for violation of social distancing rules.
In addition, the House of Representatives on Tuesday considered and adopted several motions bordering on interventions to mitigate the social and economic impact of the pandemic. Now, among the resolutions, of course, is the need for the Presidential Task Force to direct state governors to immediately halt the evacuation or relocation of Almajiris to their states of origin.
Indeed, like the Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Hanire, said a few days ago, efforts are being intensified to curb community transmission. But how effective has this been? What are the challenges in implementing measures to contain the virus? What is the level of response in various states? These and more issues will form the thrust of our conversation this morning as we examine situation reports from states. I am Nigerian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadola, and we thank you for being with us on the program, as always, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Newspaper review, business, and others will be part of our complimentary segments. But right now, let's take the highlights of the morning news with our colleague, Comfort Amodo. Good morning, Comfort.
Good morning, Kingsley. Let's now take the news highlight. At about midnight of 13th May 2020, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control confirmed 184 new cases of COVID-19 in the country. The breakdown of the figures show that Lagos has 51, Jigawa 23, Bauchi and Katsina State recorded 16 cases each, Kano 14, FCT and Rivers have 10 each, while Kwara has 9 with Delta and Kaduna recording 5 cases each. Others are Sokoto and Oyo with 4 cases each, Kebbi, Nasarawa and Osun 3 cases each, while Ondo has 2. Ebonyi and Edo have 1 new case each. With this development, Nigeria has a total of 4,971 cases of COVID-19, out of which 1,070 were discharged, while 164 patients died of the virus. The Federal Executive Council has approved further amendment to the 2020-2022 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework as well as 2020 Appropriation Act. This is in response to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the nation's economy. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, announced this while briefing newsmen after the meeting of the Federal Executive Council.
The approval has these key parameters. The crude oil price is approved at $25 per barrel. Crude oil production is approved at 1.94 million barrels per day, and then an exchange rate of 360 naira to $1. The revised budget is now in the total sum of 10.523 trillion, a difference of just about 71.5 billion when compared to the approved budget. This is because as we cut down the size of the budget, we also had to bring in new expenditure that were previously not budgeted to enable us adequately respond to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Former Minister of External Affairs, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, is the new Chief of Staff to President Muhammadu Buhari. Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, confirmed his appointment by the President at the commencement of the first virtual meeting of the Federal Executive Council.
His Excellency has approved the appointment of Professor Ibrahim Gambari as his new Chief of Staff.
I thank the Almighty Allah for the opportunity and the President of the Federal Republic for giving me this opportunity to serve him and, of course, the country. I think he demands loyalty, competence, and support.
So what will be your guiding principles as Chief of Staff?
To serve the President to the best of my ability.
And the All Progressives Congress congratulates Professor Ibrahim Gambari on his appointment as the new Chief of Staff to President Muhammadu Buhari. National Publicity Secretary of APC Lanre Issa Onilu in a statement says the appointment demonstrates President Buhari's avowed commitment to good governance by bringing on board competent Nigerians to assist him in taking Nigeria to the next level. And similarly, the Northern Governors Forum extend hearty congratulations to Professor Ibrahim Agbola Gambari over his appointment as the new Chief of Staff by President Muhammadu Buhari. In a message, Chairman of the Forum and Governor of Plateau State, Simon Bakulalong, described the appointment of the accomplished diplomat and administrator as most deserving and timely. President Muhammadu Buhari is assuring the people of Nasarawa State that decisive steps will be taken by the federal government towards restoring normalcy in the security situation of the state. This is when he granted audience to the state governor Abdullahi Sule at his official residence Wednesday.
Situation in Toto especially is very bad, because right now the military had a joint operation with the Air Force as well as the police recently, and they were able to destroy the camp of the Dar es Salaam group that they have regrouped, and now they are kidnapping, is also banditry, and it's a situation that is bad. But I believe our security agencies are up to the task, and our president is also up to the task, so that's why it's necessary to brief him.
The recently repatriated Sani Abacha loot will be deployed towards 3 of the federal government's 5 priority projects, excluding the Mambila Power and East-West Road projects. In an earlier statement, the Senior Special Assistant to President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, had mistakenly added the Mambila as one of the 5 priority projects to benefit from the $311 million Abacha loot under the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund, PIDF, managed by the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. However, while the Mambila and East-West Expressway are regarded under the PDIF as priority projects, they are exempted from the agreement signed between the Nigerian United States and British Territory of Jersey governments. The document indicates that only the second Niger Bridge, Abuja-Kaduna Kano Expressway and Lagos-Ibadan Expressway will benefit from the repatriated funds. The funds are domiciled in the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. Federal government assets valued at billions of naira but lying waste in parts of the country have attracted the attention of the House of Representatives. The Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila has therefore inaugurated an ad hoc committee to investigate such abandoned federal government properties.
We have a public health emergency unlike anything we have ever seen before. At the same time, the drop in oil prices, our most valuable commercial export product, has left us with an economy in severe decline.
And that concludes the news highlight for now. Good morning, Nigeria. And COVID-19 situation reports in state will continue with Kingsley and Kirian after this break. Good morning.
Spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. The number of the COVID-19 cases in Nigeria is increasing daily with many more tests ongoing. The battle of testing, isolating, treating, and attending to the affected persons rests heavily on the shoulders of our health workers, constantly putting their lives on the line and at risk to contain this virus, save and protect the lives of millions of Nigerians. To these health workers, we at the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, on behalf of millions of Nigerians, say a big thank you for all that you have done and are doing. To the security agencies enforcing the lockdown and every other frontliner, we say thank you for putting your lives on the line to save ours. There is no amount of words that can quantify our gratitude. Thank you. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. In this time of despair, our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this virus doom our very existence, then what have we gained? This is the call to every Nigerian to unite as one and stop the spread of this deadly virus. Stay at home and stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't move unless we move. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
And now time for business news. Coronavirus pandemic has indeed slowed down activities in the aviation industry. Let's now find out what some experts are saying as airplanes are largely grounded. Details with Kolo Mohammed on business news.
Hello and welcome to Business News. Coronavirus pandemic is shutting down most aspects of life and living. Getting goods and services to business hubs is achieved fastest through air transport. In Africa, regional integration is under threat as the aviation sector has been slowed down by the pandemic, as even the takeoff of the African Free Trade Area Agreement has been postponed owing to the pandemic.
The unique thing about the aviation sector is that when planes sit on the ground, they run bills. Yes, they run bills. The only time they're raking money is when they're in the skies. And I want to let you know that by the nature of the design of airplanes, they are built to work. They are built so well and so regulated that I often say to anyone that bothers to listen to me that airplanes are faithful machines. They fall out of the skies because human operators can be faithful and sometimes extremely dishonest.
Let's now see where midweek activities on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange placemaking indices. I am Kolo Mohammed, saying thanks for having you along on Business News.
Many thanks, Kolo Mohammed, for the business news. Next is newspaper review.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Tebi, is already here in the studio. Bayo, good morning.
Thank you, Kate.
And welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Bayo, good to see you. Let's begin with the Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun, and we have an earpiece there beside the nameplate. It says, Buhari orders purchase of made in Nigeria goods only. Buhari orders purchase of made in Nigeria goods only. Details on page 6. COVID-19, that's the lead story with a kick out. 171,000 Nigerian children risk death in 6 months. UNICEF warns. With 2 riders, global body says country to also record 6,800 maternal deaths same period, and freight forwarders threaten strike. That's on page 26 in greater detail. And below the photograph there on the front page showing the president during the virtual meeting of the Federal Executive Council yesterday in Abuja. Evacuation of Nigerians in Canada postponed as airpeace is denied landing permit. That's on page 8. Buhari names Gambari as Chief of Staff. With the rider, APC, Atiku, Tinubu, and the Shomole, as well as governors, congratulate new presidential aide. Details on page 6. Coronavirus. Only one researcher has submitted request for drug approval, and that's according to NAFDAC, with details on page 26. Federal government slashes 2020 budget to 10.523 trillion naira and sets oil benchmark at $25 per barrel and approves new MTEF. That's medium-term expenditure framework, with details on page 2. And lastly, there's a strip headline there. It says, INEC bars staff and visitors without face masks from offices. That's page 26. That's right.
All right, to Leadership newspaper, from top, we have NSC attracts 65.27 billion foreign investment in Q1. NSC stands for Nigerian Stock Exchange. The story is on page 6. And NAF destroys 33 Boko Haram enclaves in 4 months. It's on page 8. Now the list story. Federal government okays cut of 2020 budget to 10.523 trillion. Yeah, that's on page 4. But it has some riders. PEX crude oil benchmark $25 per barrel. Okays 47 billion for power sector. Says Mambila Power Project East-West Road won't be funded with recovered $311 million at Bachalut. NPA gets 683 million naira for operational vehicles. Gambari takes over as new chief of staff, vows to serve PMB to the best of his ability. That will be all. Let's bring in bio at this point. Yeah.
Well, from human interest, let's update on COVID-19. Yesterday, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control recorded 184 new cases, and these cases were registered in 22 states and the Federal Capital Territory. The total so far is 4,971. We are rapidly knocking at the door of 5,000. Lagos had the highest, 51, Jigawa 23, Kano and Bauchi had 16 each. Katsina and Bauchi had 16 each. Kano had 14, while Rivers had 10. 111 were discharged, bringing the total discharged persons to 1,070. Unfortunately, we lost another 6 Nigerians, bringing the total now to 164 in 34 states. In the Federal Capital Territory, the task force on COVID-19 arrested 68 persons traveling through the Federal Capital Territory, thereby violating the interstate ban. Drivers of trucks, after delivering goods, take passengers and hide them. They charge about 1,500 naira to convey them. 17 persons traveling from Zaria to Lokoja were stopped. There were another 16 traveling from Kano to Obajana, that is in Kogi State. 25 travelers from Edo heading for Zaria were also stopped. So they were all brought before a mobile court, and they were fined 5,000 naira each. And 2 drivers, 2 cement truck drivers and 1 fertilizer truck driver were complicit in this. Meanwhile, the Federal Executive Council held a virtual council meeting yesterday. The meeting unveiled the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Ibrahim Gambari. Among those who were with the President and the Vice President in the Council chamber were the new Chiefs of Staff, as well as the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The other ministers, many of them joined the virtual council meeting from their offices. At the end of the council meeting, the new Chief of Staff to the President said his duty is to serve the President to the best of his ability. In the chat with State House correspondents, when they asked him what his unveiling profile will be, he said the President will require his total loyalty. Secondly, he will assert his competence. And third, his total support for the President. While thanking the President for the opportunity, he also indicated that Note it, I don't report to the nation. I report directly to the president. Ask what his guiding principle will be in his new office. He said, to serve the president to the best of my ability. Meanwhile, the Federal Executive Council yesterday reviewed the 2020 budget by reviewing it down to 10.523 trillion. Oil benchmark is now $25. You know, it's been going up and down from 57, came down to 30, now it's $25. Henceforth, only made in Nigeria goods are to be patronized by government to save foreign exchange. This was one of the outcomes of the Federal Executive Council yesterday. Also, mechanization of agriculture, which the Minister of Agriculture has timed agricultural revolution, is going to come up. Among it, we are going to have a setting of over 140 processing plants. This will be in 632 tractor services in some local government area of Nigeria. So it will not be the same again for agriculture with those initiatives. The quantum of resources that has been budgeted for that is about 47 billion, I think. Yes.
Okay. That's interesting.
There's that story that Kingsley read about homemade drugs. You recall that the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 on Tuesday challenged Nigerians. So if you have any initiative research, come with what you have. Well, the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria says the Institute of Pharmaceutical has several drugs that have been developed. Where are they? They are waiting on their shelves. Incidentally, the National Agency for Drug Administration and Control says that so far, in spite of all claims about ability to cure and treat, they are all claims on the social and conventional media. So far, it has only received one of such for consideration and approval.
Yeah. Now, what should be established is it only NAFDAC that has the responsibility of carrying out a further verification? Because we talk about NABRI, yes, and CDC as well. I don't know. I don't understand the mechanism here. Whose duty is it to do that? Because NAFDAC is to give approval, isn't it?
Yes.
But what about verification and validation? Maybe
it's part of it, because the NAFDAC has the responsibility to determine the toxicology and the safety for use by people, and that's when you get a NAFDAC registered number and certification. Before any drugs will be used in Nigeria at all, it must have that certification. All what they are saying is that this due process is required to certify drugs. There are several claims, and NAFDAC is saying that not many of them have come forward. They are all waiting in the wing. And the Nigerian Medical Association are also lended the voice. They are saying that they challenge government to devote some of the funds that are coming in for COVID-19 to be devoted for research, so that we can move forward and having indigenous drugs that can tackle some of our medical challenges.
Yeah, but a few days ago, Kingsley had a program where he hosted or co-hosted some people who have laid claims to herbal medicine or whatever local concoction that they have come up with. And what happened? I mean, if only one has been, sent to NAFDAC, what does it now mean?
No, well, it's not the request, if you like, for persons with curative potions or curative medicines to come forward and submit them for verification and validation was made only a couple of days ago. So it might take a while, for the proponents of such potions or concoctions. I mean, concoction doesn't seem to be a particularly sweet word to use. Whoever has a claim, a scientific claim, to present it, to NAFDAC. And there are processes. It's not that you made a request 2 days ago and then NAFDAC yesterday is saying only one person has come, only one person has come. No, there are processes. Exactly. And then he also raised the issue of NIPRID. NIPRID also has its own role, because we had Dr. Zawa from Yobe State join us, and he said that the toxicity test that had been carried out by NIPRID, and then clinical trials and all kinds of things that will also need to be conducted. It is not as if, I have some preparation and then suddenly I will take it to NAFDAC for that. No, I still have to go through NIPRID. There are various stages to go. They say there are animal trials that you also have to have before you now go to the clinical trials, which will involve human beings. And I'm sure before you go to the next level of NAFDAC, that is important, so that you don't just write people off and say it's only one person that has come. They are making bogus claims.
And I'm not sure now that NAFDAC has the capacity to go through the process that just explained with respect to having trials on animals and what have you. So what should be the role of NAFDAC and NIPRID? Are they collaborating, or should they really collaborate in the first instance? Because in this connection, we need collaboration, because we know that NAFDAC has very, staff that have the capacity. Likewise, NIPRID.
Plus biosafety.
Exactly.
Plus biosafety.
Yes.
And then the Institute of Medical Research. So it's not, that's what is the role of NAFDAC in all of this, and what is the role of the other agencies of government? You recall, Kyria, we've had Institute of Medical Research on Good Morning Nigeria. The chief executive joined us via Skype from Lagos. Biosafety Agency was also here. NIPRID is also here. The key thing is to say, look, what is the role of each of these ones in terms of verification and validation? And then before you now say, okay,
give approval
by before it comes.
Well, I think we are in an emergency.
Yes.
We are waging a war against COVID-19. Yes. It is not an occasion for everybody to claim territory. NIPRID, biotechnology, bioresearch, NAFDAC. They all need to come together to cooperate as the hacking expression. All hands must be on deck to find a solution. Yeah, it is not time for territorial integrity.
Exactly. That has always been the case in this country, where some people are so territorial that they want to protect their own little enclave, instead of expanding their horizon. Because if personnel from these agencies, two each, sit down on a round table, you get these things done. The synergy is even simple to achieve because they are professionals in the medical field. So everybody know your own area, your area of specialization. So it doesn't even bring in any kind of rivalry in the first place. Okay, to editorial now. It's taken from the Pilot newspaper. Cooperating with government against COVID-19. We're still talking about cooperation here, but let me just read one paragraph here. He said the cooperation of government, citizens, public and private institutions, corporate bodies, as well as aggregation of other relevant positive forces is very crucial towards a successful handling of COVID-19. Bayo.
Well, it is very sad because the posturing by Nigerians is that this ease of lockdown measures was put in place at least to reduce tension among people. But the guideline for that is that you have to observe safety measures. Unfortunately, many see it as government safety measures, rather than safety measures protecting citizens of the country from being infected and meeting untimely death. In fact, there's a report in Punch that says that members of the public are joining to violate what they describe as observing the protocol of federal government. Can you imagine that? It's the protocol put together by federal government to protect you and I from infecting others or getting infected. It is to prevent us from this pandemic that is ravaging the whole world. But people are not obeying it. And that the editorial is saying that if you go to banks, people are still flocking to the bank. In fact, to react to this, the governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, said he has a mind to order banks to resume fully because banks are opening partially. That is why there are few banks that are open and so many people that are being attended to. And said he was going to give instruction for banks to open in Lagos fully, to run their normal 8 to 4 p.m. daily, so that we reduce this congestion at the place. Most importantly,
I think, I'm sorry to jump in here. Let's not seek to crucify, for instance, the banks in terms of the partial opening of their branches once the lockdown began easing. What was their rationalization? Their rationalization was that if they opened all their branches simultaneously and assuming all customers then started visiting the various branches, there was the risk of transmission. And assuming there was that transmission risk and the risk actually became reality, then you might have a number of bank workers who just might be infected, which would then also paralyze the operations, assuming those persons will require hospitalization. But it would appear now that, it's become, the approach they took is counterproductive.
Yes.
In the sense that you now have very fewer branches, and then
more people
a
going
surge.
there.
So I think that but the initial rationalization seemed okay. What needs to be done now is to walk along the lines that the Lagos State governor has suggested. Open up.
What I've been doing, even before the total lockdown in FCT, Ogun and Lagos, was, look, people queue outside, maintain some distance from each other. Then 2 or 3 persons will go into the bank at a particular point in time, and depending on the size of the banking hall, right, 2, 3. Then when they come out, or one person comes out, you will be replaced by another person. Well, that way, gradually, people will maintain distance and do their banking transactions. But when you close some and open some, of course, everybody will go to one. It happened to me on 2 occasions in Abuja. I came to a place it was like a marketplace.
Yes,
I had to leave.
It's simple logic. If you have 50,000 customers going to 10 banks, then you have a problem. But if you have 50,000 customers going to about 100 banks, then the distribution is reduced. It's simple logic.
But let's face it, considerably, we had seen it thinning out of bank customers in banking halls on account of the various platforms that are available.
Yes.
Before COVID-19, if you walk into some banking halls, the banking halls were virtually, empty.
Yes.
They're not heavily populated. So it is this closure that is required.
But it's not in the bankings alone. Even the markets, the few days that are allowed for people to shop and restock, when you go there, social distancing is not observed. The crowding is
it was like yesterday in the FCT. I don't know if you drove around. Any person who drove around the Wuse Market would have just been wondering whether there was a soccer match going on there. All right. Bayo, if we're going to have to place a pause here.
Thank you.
And then begin the play tomorrow. Bayo, thanks a lot for being with us. As always, we appreciate you, and then see you tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with COVID-19 and responses from some states.
Coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person, who affects 2 persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the 2 persons have affected 4, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
Now believe this corruption. You know if you touch black man, if you like gather the whole Niger come together, make a cough. Nothing.
Which one you want?
Give me V&D.
I beg, get small pieces.
How much you want to give him?
Give me 200. Take your change now, Ruby.
You know what your change is? My people, this coronavirus, na serious matter. No, now wash your hands regularly. Come use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. If you no see water, wash your hand. Oh, make una sit down for house. You see this virus, so it no get leg. Now we dey waka kurukere. No waka around make the virus for die. No forget say the betterment of our people. Now for your handy day.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
Do you not know that our enemies have no face? They are indigents of no state. They come from no place. And if this boat capsizes, every one of us will go under. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do not say, I am the Iroko when the forest is burning. Do not say, I am the Obeche when the forest is burning. Our differences will not stop us from perishing together. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer.
I just don't understand this coronavirus thing. Is it real?
See, coronavirus, known as COVID-19, it's a global problem and has killed thousands of people in China, Italy, Spain, UK, US, and other countries around the world.
Okay. Now, why are they saying that we should stay home?
Because if you go outside and get in contact with someone who is infected, you become infected and then come back home, affect your family. That's how it happens in other countries.
Now, please, help me explain what this social distance is all about.
See, as we are now, the virus travels through the air and by touch. We must maintain 6 foot distance at all times.
Oh, so it's not by washing my hands with soap and water or hand sanitizer that is only important?
Washing of our hands regularly is very important. But we must come together and fight this virus like we did Ebola. It is our responsibility to each other.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
We thank you for staying with us. Today on Good Morning Nigeria, we're taking a look at the situation reports from different states. And to usher in this conversation, let's get some excerpts from last week's discussion put together by Victor Azu.
As at yesterday, we had 12 cases. In addition to that, we had one death. And one of those deaths is actually one of the VIPs that you can consider because he's a member of the House of Assembly. You know, that led us into shutting down the entire assembly, and we had to fumigate it, and we isolated all the other 23 members of the House of Assembly, took their samples and tested. Now, the unfortunate thing about the death of the member was that when we saw the signs of COVID-19, you know, when he was admitted, we took his samples, but before the samples the results were returned, you know, then he died. And so there was confusion about how he would be buried. So a lot of people actually, even though people were being informed, but a lot of people were fully not aware. So a lot of people appeared, you know, during his wedding, and some people gave him the burial bed and the rest of that, you know. So now we had 74 contacts as a result of that. And they are all also, we have locked down from yesterday, we locked down Nasarawa town, which happens to be the capital of the local government.
We have 2 confirmed cases in Imo State, and luckily we already had prepared isolation center here in Owerri and 4 others in the various parts of the state. We are still lucky that we just have 2 cases, but we are prepared just in case there is a sudden spike
in the numbers so that we can then have them placed in isolation stroke treatment centers. We are lucky the state teaching hospital has just about opening 100 beds units that will also help in that whole effort.
Many sees COVID-19 as one problem tied to the elites, the bourgeois and the petit bourgeois, and not the masses. So it took time for us to actually go around, talk to them. And also when you go around the suburbs, areas like within the stretch from Yanyan through Karo, through Jukwe, through Pegi, Kurudu, Gidandaya, Gidamanguru, down to Karishi, on that stretch, you go to Duse Alahaji, Duse Makaranta, you go to Jigo, Buari, on that stretch, you even go to Kuje, Pegi, you find persons really not largely believing that it is real, because at that time it was basically the names you hear are the big names, some big governors, some big persons in Maitama will say. It hasn't gotten to the community level then, but now it has gotten there. And what we must also appreciate in all the neighborhood across, the poor neighborhood across the country, most houses are not as comfortable as the ones in the city. Some persons I met, particularly at Mpape, took me to their house and told me they can't stay there. Made up of zinc sheet, no ceiling. It was from 9:10, it's no longer habitable. Excessively very hot. One guy told me he needs to come out before he dies of meningitis while trying to stay indoor against COVID-19. I think in all of this, we try talking to people, trying to sensitize them. Most time we even go to the churches. That's why we told people when we go to churches, we go to mosques. At the early stage, we were telling them, you can't be doing this. Even when we need to even take some of those clerics to actually face the mobile court, we had to address the congregants and tell them clearly that what you are doing is not good for you. You find most of those videos were aired by the NTA.
That whether we like it or not, private facilities will be exposed to COVID-19. And I was making the point on that program that government should make a deliberate effort to equip some private hospitals to be able to cope with COVID-19 cases. The reason being that many of our so-called big men would rather prefer to go to a private facility where they, maybe in their own estimation will have some kind of dignity that is appropriate to their status in society, than to go to a place, that is, open, a tent in a stadium or some other makeshift facility like that.
All right, those were excerpts from our last conversation in terms of responses from the various states as well as guests we had with us here in the studios. Today, we also have a number of guests joining us from various locations. First, from Damaturu, which is Yobe State, we've been joined via Zoom. Dr. Muhammad Lawan Ghana is the Honorable Commissioner for Health in Yobe. Dr. Ghana, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, and then we also have from our Kano Network Center, Dr. Tijani Husseini, who is the coordinator of the Kano State Technical Response Team on COVID-19. Dr. Husseini, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria. Me too, and good morning.
All right, and joining us from Oyo State is Dr. Ladipo Ladino, Manager, Task Force Team on COVID-19. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
And in our studio here is a familiar face, is Dr. Kau Mohammed, Acting Secretary, FCT Health and Human Services Secretariat. It's also a pleasure to have you this morning, as always.
Good morning, Nigerians. Thank you.
Well, of course, it's important to note that we made the efforts to, of course, invite some other states, to be part of this particular program. And the states include Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Enugu, Lagos, Ekiti, and Osho. But of course, the response was not favorable. Well, we have to say this because it's important that Nigerians get information regarding efforts being made by various subnational entities with respect to the fight against coronavirus. Kinsley.
All right, so let's go straight away to Damaturu, where we just introduced the State Commissioner for Health, who is with us via Skype, Dr. Ghana. Dr. Ghana, the first question to ask, given this opportunity, is once again to tell us what happened or what is happening in Yobe State that appears to have mirrored what we saw some weeks ago in Kano, namely unexplained deaths. It seems that grave diggers have been very busy in your state. Exactly what is happening? Coronavirus or some other causes?
Yes, thank you very much. Our attention was drawn to the deaths that happened in the state, and this was carried by an online medium which reflected this to be deaths from coronavirus disease. So in our usual response to alerts and rumors, the state put in place a team to go and investigate to verify the existence of these deaths, and then secondly, if they are there, and then to see what could be the causes of those deaths, and of course also to verify whether they are COVID-19 related or not. The results of those findings was actually disseminated on Tuesday. The findings, the fact that yes, we had about 471 deaths over the 5-week period, but then this was the deaths actually peaked around from the 29th of April. That's the last week of April to the 9th of May. We also found out that majority of the deaths have occurred between those that are 50 years and above. But then we also discovered that 90% and above of those deaths were not coronavirus related, because they did not exhibit any signs or symptoms of coronavirus disease. The other finding, knowing that coronavirus disease is a highly infectious disease, we also went a step further to find out whether in the houses of the deceased, whether there are people that may have contracted the disease. If it is coronavirus, it's expected that you will have people that are manifesting those signs and symptoms. And so we asked that they move from street to street to find out from the households whether you will have sick people. So out of those 471, 16 people were found to be ill. But then out of the 16, only 3 manifested symptoms of COVID, symptoms that were suggestive of COVID-19. Then, of course, samples have been taken of the 3 for testing. But of particular note is the fact that here in the Northeast, temperatures can go as high as 43 to 45 degrees. And in the last week of April, we are aware that temperatures rose to that level. And then, of course, the fasting started around the 22nd. So it was just basically about 5 fasts happened before the cases increased. And a while ago, somebody was giving the picture of the kind of environments that people live in. There are tight environments, and then with the heat, and then the elderly, due to the religious obligation, sometimes they wouldn't want to drop the fast. But then while we still encourage them. So you find that it is very possible that the dehydration, the heat and everything will aggravate, because we also discovered about 30% of the people had hypertension, another 20-something% had diabetes, 8% has a mixed picture of both diabetes and hypertension, and including some other chronic illnesses. So having all these underlying illnesses together with the heat and everything, it is very much possible for people to pass away as a result of these ones. And I also want to draw attention that this is not the first year that similar thing has actually been seen in this part of the country, because we know that in some years past we also saw similar incidences of deaths amongst the elderly, especially when the heat is here. And then, of course, there are evidences that show that for every degree rise in temperature, especially you also have the tendency of increased mortalities. So we are not ruling out COVID-19, and as a result of that, we actually moved into those communities to sit with the community and discuss on how we need to address these health challenges in total, because the solutions to these problems actually has to do with strong community partnership and linkages. Otherwise, we'll continue, bringing up interventions that may not necessarily be applicable to the communities that we are working in. The other thing I also want to draw the attention in we don't want a situation where we come up with other. This is a disease that needs a strong immunity for people to be able to fight the disease. So as it is, anxiety, fear, panic is not going to help matters. And that is why we keep on calling on everyone. Rather than spread fear and panic, it is better to educate the people, provide them with the knowledge and skills to be able to fight this pandemic on their own, and then thereby having a sustainable way of fighting other kinds of health challenges whenever should they arise. So as it is in Yobe State, this is the approach that we have taken. This is what we have done, and we are very optimistic that it will assist us greatly in controlling this pandemic and any other health challenge that may so arise.
All right, Dr. Mohamed Lawan Kenal, thank you indeed. What is important, Kingsley, some of the things he said is that they have data of what happened to those that died, in terms of carrying out, autopsy, with determining the percentage of what happened to who some person. So that is encouraging. It shows that there are other causative factors that are maybe responsible, for the death of those number of people. Now, let's go to Kano, where we have Dr. Tijani Hussaini. Dr. Hussaini, Kano gradually assumed the epicenter of coronavirus in the northern part of the country just recently, and we also know that the federal government has stepped up action in terms of providing some assistance to the state. Now, put us up to speed, of the current situation in Kano with respect to the handling of coronavirus in that state.
Good morning once again. In Kano, yes, we had some few weeks back, about precisely 3 weeks back, there was a resurgence, increase in the number of cases of coronavirus. And even before then, several measures were put in place. These measures included having isolation centers, a rapid response team, and so many other things, community mobilization, and so on and so forth. However, if you look at the graph, our data now, you now see gradually we are becoming stable. Our number of cases are coming down. Like yesterday, we only had 14 cases. Day before yesterday, we had also a few. So things are getting under control. And a lot of people are coming to realize that, yes, there is coronavirus, but again, we have other things to do, especially in terms of provision of healthcare service to the population. And this gradually assisted us to see that we engage all relevant health authorities from public, private, secondary, tertiary, primary facilities to ensure that we have not closed down all our services. Normalcy is beginning to come back, or has come back to the healthcare delivery in Kano, and people are taking the necessary steps to ensure that they guard themselves against getting infected with coronavirus. And we have seen gradually that increasing testing capacity in Kano has improved. significantly from about a month back, when we don't have even a testing facility in Kano, to about 3 now, who 3 lab testing for COVID-19 in Kano. And this has assisted us in ensuring that we picked and we diagnose and we put on treatment all those who are infected with the disease. And since that upsurge, we also have additional isolation centers where we keep our clients, and from then to now we have increased bed capacity of about 100%, which again is significant. And also the expansion of rapid response team, the evacuation team, the intensified community mobilization, engagement of private facilities. So I would say Kano is getting on track, and Kano is heading towards the control of this outbreak.
Well, Dr. Hussein, I just wanted to take one more question before we go over to Ibadan. You said the testing capacity has been expanded. About how many tests on the average are you able to carry out on a daily basis now? And what are you doing with the numbers that we keep seeing? I mean, Kano is certainly number 2 on the chart in the country.
The testing capacity for Kano is about 600. We have 54G lab that has a capacity of 400, BUK lab about 180, and also Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital lab, which has about 100. So if you sum this up, it's around 600, and which is significant. You know, coming from 0 when you don't have testing capacity in Kano. And over this period of time, we have been sending samples to these labs, and we get our results, and we have significantly reduced our turnaround time. And for us, this is significant. And in the next 1, 2 days, 3 days, we also have another lab that will come on board, which has capacity of about 1,000. This again shows significant progress in how we respond to this outbreak. It's only when you test, you detect, then you put people on treatment. And also looking at the number of cases, for me it's not surprising. Kano has the highest population in the country from the 2006 population census, which means that Kano, yes, expectedly, if we look at the projections, Kano expectedly should have high numbers of cases. And also by the fact that Kano is where people come from everywhere, and where people go from all over the world. So the importation of these cases is highly likely. And remember that a lot of people migrated from Lagos, moved from Lagos to Kano as a result of the lockdown, since movement in Lagos and other places that were hotspots before was a bit restrictive. So people had to move back home, and which means we were exposed significantly to getting the infection imported into Kano, and this might have caused the resurgence of cases. But again, like I said, looking at the numbers for the last few days, our cases are coming down, and we feel we are getting this outbreak under control.
Well, I think I can actually ask that question, because of, if you say it's coming down, it depends on the capacity to carry out tests. And I'm sure that's why you're talking about how many persons do have the capacity to test on a daily basis. And I think the more testing and contact tracing are ramped up in Kano, we begin to have a better result. But keep in mind that ever before Kano had the index case, we hosted your deputy governor. And Kingsley and I have so much on the population of Kano, and Kano being a very metropolitan city that has a business concerns, and it also has an international airport, meaning that people go from Kano. And what has played out today is the fact that what we were suggesting at that point in time is what we're seeing today in Kano. But I want to believe, quite frankly, that of course if you ramp up testing, that Kano will certainly get better, because anything that affects Kano will certainly affect other parts of the country based on the population that you highlighted. Thank you. At this point, let's go to Oyo State, where we have Dr. Ladipo Ladino, Manager Task Force Team on COVID-19. Sir, of course, Oyo State has a special history of this COVID-19 issue. Governor was affected and he's out of it, which means that, of course, we should all be looking forward to people who are COVID-19 positive in Oyo to recover soon. So let us know what the situation is at the moment in terms of testing, contact tracing, people who are positive already, and how the treatment is going.
In Oyo State, we currently have 73 confirmed cases. Yesterday, we had 4 new cases, and as we speak, we've had 17 of them recovered, and that includes the excellency of the state. Testing, yes, we've been able to look at testing in 2 particular ways. We follow up actively contacts of those that have been positive, but more importantly, we set up a community testing framework, and we have a facility that was dedicated within Ibadan that is to take people with symptoms, people that are contacts of positive cases, healthcare providers that are frontline that had seen such cases, and then lastly, people that actually traveled from other climes or other areas where those cases are ravaging. And we've actually been able to ramp up the numbers, and that's what we've been seeing. Initially, we were having numbers trickling in 1s and 2s. But about 3 weeks ago, we had about 8 cases following the opening of the facility. And still, we are still keeping within the 2 to 4 cases per day since then. More so, we are not looking at a possibility of getting more people aware in the population, looking at the risk that people perceive of COVID-19. We are trying to see how best we could expand the facility for treatment. So as it is, the state is about to commence another 10 facilities that will go across the Tier 3, that will take in cognizance the Tier 3 LGAs, the spread across the state, so that testing will be taken to all the nooks and crannies of the state. And with that, we hope that there won't be any area of the state that will be left out, because we do know that some parts of the states have the chances of having some agricultural processes. And we've seen, quite frankly, that we're having a lot of influx from outside the country. For example, Togo, Benin Republic, people that come into the country for the agricultural purposes. And within those populations, we found some that are positive. As of yesterday, one of the cases that came in was an 18-year-old that is an agric worker that came in from Togo. So we're looking towards those parts of the country, part of the states that border with Benin Republic, and ensure that those places have testing facilities, and then we work with some of our partners to ensure that those samples that are taken from those areas are taken to the lab that is in the University College Hospital, and we do testing as fast as possible. And with that, too, the state has looked into having isolation wards across those areas. Presently, we have isolation wards in Ibadan, 4 of them. We are actually almost completing the one in Ogbomoso. Shaki is going to come on board rather soon, and then the Ibarapa axis will have another isolation area, so that all those cases, if found in those parts, will have adequate management in terms of care and treatment. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ladino, for your explanation. We will return to you in the course of this conversation. One of the significant points you raised, among others, as I said, has to do with the fact that you are having to set up, as it were, an observatory in the border communities, so that persons who are coming in from Benin and Togo Republic can, be properly screened and then tested. This is an issue that we had earlier raised on Good Morning Nigeria. Cross River State government says, well, it still has a bulwark against potential immigrants from Cameroon or persons who are just strolling across the border. But that's the point we'll take you up on. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ladipo Ladino from our network center in Ibadan. Now, we also have joining us on this conversation Professor Wale Suleiman. He's joined us via Skype from Ilorin, which is the capital of Kwara State. Professor Suleiman is the vice chairman of the Kwara State Task Force on COVID-19. He's also a special assistant to the executive governor of the state. Professor Wale Suleiman, this is the second time we're having you on Good Morning Nigeria. The first time, of course, was in the immediate aftermath of the rather bizarre introduction of COVID-19 into your state, where a person who was sick came in from Lagos, was admitted on the instructions of a certain professor at the University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital, and then on to Offa, where a burial took place, and obviously community transmission. And these days we keep hearing about numbers rising in terms of infection in Kwara. But give us a sense of what is happening right now, either in terms of containment or in terms of spread.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. Good morning to fellow Nigerians. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about what's going on in Kwara State. Not to be redundant, but I just want to let you know that now we have 53 confirmed cases in Kwara State, out of which 12 have been discharged. So we have 40 active cases and 1 mortality. And you're right, I think Kwara State had a very robust plan to combat COVID-19, both in terms of preventing importation and also medical preparedness and responsiveness. And our medical team and the rapid response team are still doing a fantastic job. But there are 2 major challenges, which is not unique to Kwara. The first one, I can tell you that the last 20 cases, the last cases we've had in the last 1 week, they have been imported cases. There have been cases that have coming through the border, mostly from Katsina, Jigawa, and Sokoto State, through our borders. And but fortunately, most of the patients that they came through the border, they were already under quarantine, and we took samples and they came back positive. So the challenge is really trying to make sure that we strengthen our efforts in making sure the borders remain closed and only people with essential services are allowed to come through. The other big challenge is actually having the capacity to test. I think those 2 things, you really don't quite understand the extent of the disease unless you have the capacity to test and get results back promptly. But in terms of our ability to contain community transmission, I think the team is doing a fantastic job. And that's reflected in the way in which the people that were suspect cases for COVID-19 were already in our quarantine center and tests were taken from there. Remember that at the onset of this, we created with 1,000 bed capacity in Kwara State, including a 10-bed ICU, an isolation center that was built even before COVID-19 was being talked about. We closed one of our hospitals and transformed it into a COVID-19 treatment center, creating about 350 bed capacity. And then we converted our Hajj camp into a 600-bed quarantine center. And that is coming in very handy right now as we're seeing increasing cases.
Okay, thank you. I thought he was still speaking. Actually, now we're going to go back there definitely because he talked about the team doing a fantastic job, and he talked about medical preparedness. Perhaps it also means PPE, treatment protocol, and others. So we need further explanation on that. Presently, let's come back to Abuja here, where we have Dr. Kawu Mohammed. Dr. Kawu, we all live in Abuja here with you. And we can see what is happening. First, in terms of adherence to the guidelines of the ease of lockdown, since it started last week, people are not adhering to that guideline. That one is definite. And the chairman of the task force, who just spoke on TV earlier on, talked about the efforts being made, to ensure that people comply with this. And in your opinion, what should be the proper focus in FCT at the moment? Because the guideline is flouted, people as if behaving as if nothing has happened in the FCT.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the most important thing is to continue to educate people and let them know that if they don't follow the medical advice, they will get infected. And if you get infected, you are likely going to lose your life. So, the experiences we had with patients on admission is very, very disturbing. For instance, the gentleman we got admitted from Mabushi, they did not believe they have the disease because they were asymptomatic ab initio. They were admitted there because of the isolation. In that community, if you leave them, they will continue to infect other people. So, their own was, you said this disease is 14 days. And you kept us here 14 days, no cough, no sore throat, no fever. And you are still keeping us. Because we tested, they were still positive. So they did not understand. So this is somebody who has even tested positive. Imagine somebody who has not even been tested. So people still don't believe these things are real. And otherwise, how can I go to a bank and enter this crowd? As you said when we were discussing earlier, if I come to the crowd, to a bank or to a mall, and I see that there's so many people, I will not go in. Because going in will expose me. And I will get infected and go and infect other people, go and infect my family. So the most important thing is we must continue to educate people. Educate people, let people know the implication of all these things. You can't force people. It's not only medical issue. There is security issue. There is economic factors. And I believe that's why government decided to ease the lockdown. But people still don't understand. So it's a big issue.
Well, Dr. Kao, Abuja is one of the host cities to Nigerian returnees from abroad, persons who have been flown in from either UAE or from the UK or from the US. How are the returnees doing?
Yeah, I think they are doing well because I've been issued this arrangement by Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Federal Ministry of Health with FCT that they pre-arranged hotel accommodation for all returnees. As they are coming in at the airport, they follow the protocol of COVID, not going through the routine immigration. The temperatures are taken, they are giving kits for testing their temperature and other things. They are moved into buses straight to the designated hotel. And in that hotel, there is arrangement for the feeding. And presently, we are trying to arrange a medical team to be stationed in that hotel for those that may have some symptoms of fever, diarrhea, and other things that may not be related to COVID-19. And they are tested and quarantined for the 14 days. And if they finish their 14 days, those that happen to be positive will be moved to treatment centers. But those that are negative will be allowed to go into the society. So it's going on fine with some little hitches because some of them feel the accommodation is not comfortable. I know those that came from US also, they are in Barcelona Hotel, which is a 4 to 5 star hotel. So they are in all the hotels and they are being monitored. Yes.
All right, thank you. We return to Yobe now, where we have Mohammed Lawan Ghana, Honorable Commissioner for Health. in that state. In your opening remarks, you actually expatiated on the efforts being put in place by the state government and the research that you carried out with respect to the deaths recorded in Yobe State. That's outstanding. At this point, I'd like you to also let us know what the treatment protocol looks like in Yobe State. A few days ago, we hosted a Yobe indigene who is known for his expertise in terms of herbal medicine, who actually is optimistic that that medicine will finally be adopted either by Yobe State government or even Nigeria as a nation. Tell us more about that and the sort of treatment protocol, and of course the response to this treatment by some patients of COVID-19 in Yobe State.
Yes, we are very much proud of our African traditional medicine expert who has come up with a kind of solution to that. But then again, as a state, we are abiding by the guidelines set by the federal government on alternative medicine. What we have done is also adhere to the NCDC guidelines in terms of managing cases that tested positive for COVID-19. We have isolation. We have an isolation center here in the state capital, and then of course we have another in the Federal Medical Center in Guru. So those that are tested positive are actually kept in the isolation centers, and then the treatment protocol is what so are using. What the NCDC guidelines have clearly spelled out. We are also, in view of the fear of the community transmission, we're also actively searching for cases in the communities, and then, of course, to test them and then bring them into care. Then we are also very conscious of the fact that the elderly and those with comorbidities, the obese and others, are most vulnerable when it comes to COVID-19. And as such, we are partnering with the communities to protect those categories of people so as to
I can't hear anything anymore.
Control the mortalities in those in our populations.
Okay, Dr. Ghana, still with you. I would just like you to clarify this in the first instance. You talked about ascertaining the cause of death of some 418 persons or more over a certain given period. I was just wondering, how did you do this? Was it by formal autopsy or it was by verbal autopsy, as we saw in Kano? That's one leg of the question. Second leg of the question is as follows. You have a very large livestock market in Yobe State. There's also another very large grains market in your state. The livestock market many years ago got raised by Boko Haram elements, but the market is back into full operation. There are concerns that there is very little social distancing being observed at these two locations. How is this an aid or indeed a hindrance to some of the protocols required to prevent the community transmission of coronavirus in your location?
Yes. You see, the issue of physical and social distancing, as we have admitted several times, is one issue that we may not have done very well in that. But then the issue is around the large livestock market and so on. Like I've mentioned earlier, the population has gone through devastation of insurgency. And that has really affected the economy of the people in the state, as well as, of course, the state itself. So as a result of that, we are very careful not to further, not to further stress the economy of the people. And that is why we still chose to, while cautiously allow those markets to go on. But then, however, the state came up with the following guidelines if these markets are to continue functioning. One, like I said earlier, we are engaging deeply with the leadership of those markets, the leadership of the motor parks, our traditional institutions, our religious leaders, and all the key stakeholders in those local, sit with them, discuss deeply with them around the problems that we're having around COVID-19, but then not only COVID-19, but all other health-related challenges across board. And then we now seek to come up with contextualized solutions to these problems. Secondly, the state has made it mandatory for the use of face masks. So without a face mask, people will not be allowed to access those markets. But then thirdly, we are also working closely with the market operators to ensure physical and social distancing in the market. But you would agree with me that this can only be achieved when we have full cooperation and understanding by the various communities and the populations around. The other thing is, as a way to impose the physical and social distancing, the state also came up with the law that tricycle operators can't carry more than 2 people, and then the commercial vehicles will carry, the saloons will carry only 2 people in the back, and then if it is buses, only 2 people per seat, which significantly reduces the crowding in those vehicles. So as it is, we are gradually working with the population to create understanding, and then also to have more stronger and more sustainable solutions to these problems that we are facing. The issue is that these are COVID-19 being a new disease, which we are still learning from. The interventions as well are interventions that we have to, try out, learn from them, record our success stories, and then, of course, also have our lessons learned, and then continue to tweak the interventions until we get it right. But I also, the emphasis I'm trying to make here is the fact that unless states really look into their own context, and design context-specific interventions, we will not be able to control this. And here Yobe said this is what we're trying to achieve based on our peculiarities.
Okay. Mohammed Lawan Ghana, Honorable Commissioner for Health, Yobe State, we'd like to thank you for your contributions this morning. Perhaps in due course, we may return you to the program to also discuss other aspects of COVID-19 in Yobe that we were unable to cover today. But in the meantime, we'd like to appreciate you for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much. I also want to thank you for having me, and I'll be happy to come back anytime my attention is needed.
All right. Now to Dr. Tijani Hussaini, Coordinator, Kano State Technical Response Team on COVID-19. In fact, the question explicitly put to Yobe State Commissioner for Health should also come to you with respect to the issue of having a larger cattle market and the grain market, as case may be. When it comes to business in northern part of Nigeria, Kano is also an epicenter, and we also have a population, a huge population added to that, and business activities here and there. Is Kano still on lockdown, total lockdown or partial lockdown? If yes, how are people responding to the guidelines, for this lockdown? How are they coping? What is the level of understanding of residents of Kano with respect to maintaining some guidelines like social distancing, wearing of face masks, and others?
Yes, Kano is in partial lockdown, We have 12 hours in a week. Thursday, like today, Thursday, this is an open day from morning till 2 o'clock, and also on Tuesdays. So this is how Kano operates. And remember that Kano, the government of Kano made wearing of face masks compulsory on all citizens of Kano, and also it also directed that all commercial motorcycles, the tricycles, which we call in Kano, must not take more than one person. So also taxis are restricted on the number of people they take, so that we enforce the social distancing. And from what we have seen, Kano people are obeying these instructions. You see a lot of people wearing face masks, and recently, 3 days ago, His Excellency, the Governor of Kano State, flagged off the distribution of face masks to about 1 million, and also we've ordered another 1 million, making it 2 million. This is to ensure that everybody has face masks, and the distribution of these face masks is ongoing. And we see significant progress, compliance by people to lockdowns, complying on social distancing. We have not yet seen major setback in all our preparations, and we feel with this we are going to get everything under control.
Dr. Hussaini, I would like you to take this question before we go on a short break. Yes, you've talked about the improvement generally in terms of containment measures of COVID-19, but anecdotal evidence would tend to suggest that Kano State probably is one of the major sources of people smuggling across interstate boundaries, so that whether they're getting into Katsina or getting into Kaduna, other parts of the north, or indeed coming down here to the Federal Capital Territory before finding their way to Lagos and elsewhere. Is there a failure of effective policing as part of the raft of measures by your committee to ensure that, look, your boundaries are secure and those who shouldn't escape, that you have all kinds of persons riding in trucks conveying essential commodities? Why is this failure so?
I think it's important to know that this is a two-way thing. While people move out of Kano, but again, significant number of people come in from other states. So it's not peculiar to Kano that people come in or go out. This is a general problem. And a state alone, since it exists in a federation, it cannot enforce a restriction of movement without federal authorities. Remember, Kano is one of the first states that enforced restriction of movement to the state. And we feel that, yes, we have people are being smuggled in, which is, again, a threat to us, because some of the cases we had are also coming from outside of Kano. So, yes, we might have some failures here and there, but again, on the general note, we have a lot of success. The success far outweigh the failures, seeming failures we have in the security arrangement to ensure that people are prevented from coming in or going out of Kano.
The good thing is that he has accepted the fact that people are smuggled in and out. You know, it's either you're leaving Kano or you're coming into Kano. So that failure is established, and the important thing here is to stop it. To increase the level of policing in your boundaries. Well, this is Good Morning Nigeria. We broadcast live on NTA Network Service, and we're here in our Abuja Network studio. And we are taking a short break now. When we get back, this conversation will continue.
You don't wait for life. You go to meet life. It's not about how many chances you get. It's what you do with what you've got. Cup after cup. Morning after morning. Start strong, finish strong. It all starts with a Nescafe. There is a lot of fake news and report circulating, especially on social media
on the coronavirus. Do not believe or partake in the spread of these fake reports. If it is not on the official website or news from the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, disregard such report. Only together can we beat this virus. Only together can we overcome this pandemic. Follow the instructions and guidelines provided to combat this virus. Most importantly, stay at home. Self-isolate, regardless of your status. The virus doesn't move unless we move. Let us work together to better Nigeria. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide. Don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 2255 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
Nigerians, let us take responsibility. Stay healthy, stay safe, and curb the spread of the virus. Take responsibility. The coronavirus spreads from one person to another. Let us avoid crowd gathering of any kind for any reason. Take responsibility. Avoid traveling from one state to another during these lockdown restrictions. Obey all the rules that are put in place. Take responsibility. Stop spreading fake news and unverified reports about the coronavirus. There is no known cure for COVID-19. Take responsibility. Observe all the measures that can help stop the spread of the virus. Together, we can do this, but only if we take responsibility. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
All right, welcome back, and still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Just before we bring in again Professor Wale Suleiman, who is with us via Skype from Ilorin, we would like to apologize to our guest from our Ibadan studio. We had earlier been calling him Dr. Ladipo Ladino. His full name is actually Dr. Taiwo Bode Ladipo. Thank you very much for the correction which you passed on to our producer. But so we'll come back to you at our Ibadan studio, but back to Professor Wale Suleiman, Vice Chairman, Kwara State Task Force on COVID-19 via Skype. Prof, well, give us an update, because when the case broke, as it were, in Kwara, there was the alarm that a number of medical personnel who attended to your index case themselves might have been infected. And they had to therefore go on self-isolation. That's well past 14 days now. What is their status? That's one. Two, there was also the fear that OFA might then become a tinderbox in terms of the explosion of cases in Kwara. Has that fear been realized or mollified?
What transpired in that case was something we discussed the last time I was here. But since then, you can see that we haven't reported any case more far. The physicians the healthcare workers that were exposed, they were under quarantine, they were tested, and they were negative. And we've had subsequent exposures to healthcare workers, and they were also brought in. And they've had 2 repeated tests that came back negative, and they've done well. We have not. We established a quarantine center in Offa, and the community has been very engaged. We've not reported any case from that community since then. Before the last time you were talking to me, I was saying that the healthcare team are doing a fantastic job. And the reason why I said that is up until 1 week ago, we had 16 cases, and we had about 50% recovery rate. People were discharged from the hospital. They have their treatment protocol in place. We have the hospital bed capacity. We had the right equipment, the right treatment protocol. We have everybody was working extremely hard. Our contact tracing, up until we started having cases coming from other states, most of the cases that we discovered were through our contact tracing. They were tracing hundreds, if not thousands, of people that were exposed to the index cases that we had in Kwara State. And we have spent billions of naira purchasing PPEs, making sure equipment. In the ICU, we have ventilators. People have been trained on how to use the equipment that we purchased. And we quickly sent test samples to Ibadan or Lagos. And like I said earlier on, the challenge is the time it takes to get the result of the test sample, the sample sent to those places. So we need to get a testing center in each state of the federation. That's the only way you can know the extent of the disease. I think that our people, the team that we put together, both in terms of trying to secure the borders, trying to make sure that we have the right setup in the medical facilities, trying to make sure we have the treatment that our people need, both in terms of oxygen supply. As you know, most of these patients will need oxygen treatment. And so that's why we revamped and refurbished our oxygen plant, which had been moribund for about 11 years. And during this lockdown, during these challenging times, we were still able to refurbish it. Now we can produce oxygen in Kwara State and even be able to supply it to some of our neighboring states if needed. So, since COVID-19, in an interesting way, is exposing a lot of inefficiencies, deficiencies in discipline in our society. But even on that background, Kwara State is doing very well to make sure that we step up our game, stay ahead of it, and make sure that we keep our people safe. The two biggest challenges, like I said, is importation, people coming from other states. And almost 100% of the cases we've reported in the last week or so are patients that people that have come in from the northern states, Katsina State, Sokoto State, and Jigawa. But we're doing all we can. We've now deployed the military at the borders to make sure our borders are more secured. We've engaged the communities at the border states to make sure, and the civilians in that area to make sure they can collaborate with police and the military personnel to make sure our borders are secured. We are intensifying our efforts to make sure that contact tracing is going well, that we use our quarantine center, which is a 600-bed capacity, to quarantine people that we feel may be exposed to COVID-19. In our communities, as you know, all over Nigeria, self-isolation, especially for poor people that are undereducated, is very challenging. So instead of relying on that, we're taking people out of circulation and putting them in quarantine centers. So efforts are ongoing. These are trying times for Nigeria as a country. And again, we need to address some fundamental issues post-COVID-19.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Oyo State, where we have Dr. Taiwo Bode Ladipo, Manager Task Force Team of COVID-19. We've heard you earlier on, talking about the containment measures that have been ramped up in Oyo State. You also told us that you have up to about 73 cases in Oyo. I was telling my colleague that, look, that is on the high side, and he said no, that it is low, also considering the population of Oyo State. Now, tell us more about these containment measures with respect to interstate travel, which has become one of the major transmission avenues. Every state is talking about it. Now we've just spoken with our guest in Ilori, who is saying that 100% for now, 100% of cases they have in that state are people who came in from Lagos, Kano, and other parts of the world, other parts of the country. Now, how are you coping with the interstate travels in and outside Oyo? And again, let us know. I keep asking this question, especially to medical personnel. When we hear about treatment protocol, some of us who are laymen in this in medical field would think, look, what are people taking? In other climes, you get to know treatment protocol. America is using remdesivir, right? And perhaps other ones, some are using hydroxychloroquine, for instance. Well, we heard from your governor then, I'm not sure whether that is true, but then we heard from him that he used black seed oil and other local concoctions, as the case may be, and he's free.
Including amala.
Including amala or something. So, and you know, in your part of the country, you know, people really rely on herbal medicine a great deal, you know, even before the advent of coronavirus. Tell us more.
About the interstate travel, that's been a sore point. We've had so much issues with influx of people from all our highways, and the governor had to come forcefully to get the security agents to look at the influx and try to seal up interstate travel. And as it is now, there had been cases that had been returned back at the state borders, and the state borders are quite extensive: Kwara, Osun, Ogun, and the highways from Lagos. Your state is the next point of call apart from Abeokuta. So we still have quite a lump of challenge with that, and because of that, we are actually engaging very well with the Nigerian police. At the same time, we've been able to get some form of contact with the immigration services, considering the fact that we have a long stretch of our border with Benin Republic. And as it is now, we're trying to get the communities that are on those stretch, especially that bordering with Nigeria and the Benin Republic, to actually complement the efforts of the manned borders. There are quite a lot of footpaths that are unmanned, and we're using community vigilantes to ensure that those are actually strictly kept clean, so that we won't have that much of influx coming in. And with that too, we go to communities that have this regular patronage of those people from those climes for agricultural purposes. We have set up testing isolation within those communities. We've had very good, robust discussion with the chairman of local governments and heads of communities, such that when those people do come in and they are identified, they are kept in various places for isolation for that 14-day period, and after which we test. We take samples for testing, and when those people are found to be negative, they are allowed to continue their normal livelihood. Talking about what the treatment protocol is, when patients come into our isolation facilities, they are taken through with the infectious disease specialist, especially in the IDH in Olodo in Ibadan. And they take medications like azithromycin, hydroxychloroquine. But then, these are still not confirmed medications for COVID-19. And they are just taken based on what examples that we found in some climes of the world. And what we actually tried to do the most is ensure that we're up with immunity, things that can be immune boosters, multivitamins, and normal diet. I was amused. The governor of the state also spoke about it. He mentioned his use of black seed, and that had been something that people have been looking into. We have so much collaboration now with the academia, especially talking about the state having the foremost university here, and those areas are being looked into. We have quite a number of people that are talking about herbal remedies. We've been able to link them up with such research organizations to look at that those claims and see how best those claims can be utilized. But as far as we are in Oyo State now, we're still trying as much as possible to adhere to the protocols. We are trying as much as possible to ensure that people do not self-medicate. We try to give out adversarials in terms of preventive measures and make sure that we reduce the chances of transmission, more so now that we are having some signs that are indicators of community transmission. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ladipo, for your explanation, except that you sidestep the issue of whether amala is part of the mix in terms of immune boosters that we should also take into consideration. Thank you very much. Let's come back to our Abuja studios. Dr. Mohammed Kawu, who is the acting secretary in charge of health services in the FCT. Abuja, of course, is central. And it's almost unthinkable that persons who are being smuggled from different parts of the country, south to north and north to south, east to west, and so on and so forth, wouldn't pass through the FCT. And some of them, of course, actually getting smuggled into the FCT. How much of a challenge is this people smuggling as a hindrance, to effective maintenance of lockdown, relative or otherwise, to frustrate community transmission? That's one. And then just how much testing is going on. We've had you on this program talk about testing. You talked about how some areas have been zoned and marked out, but you don't seem to speak outside of the earlier areas that you had earlier tested. So what is the testing capacity even of the FCT?
Thank you so much. The first question is a big challenge. Almost all the states talked about it, people moving in and out. So you will imagine what will be happening in Abuja, because most of the elites have dual houses. You have a house in Abuja, you have one in your homestead. So if there is issue in your homestead, you want to come back to Abuja. So a lot of people have come back, and despite the lockdown and the security at the borders of the state, a lot of people have come in, and many of them have tested, and a lot of them are positive. Some of the numbers we are getting are actually from some of these places. So it's an issue, and the administration, as you know, ATA is handling the issue of people coming in. We've had to send vehicles back to their states. There was a time I was called to get an accommodation for isolation of people coming with a bus full of people. And I advised my administration, we can isolate people coming. By the time you open the floodgate, you will have more than you can. So the decision was anybody coming should be sent back. And that's the policy of the administration. And we've been doing that. But all the same, a lot of people find their way into the territory. And there's nothing anybody can do. And the other issue about testing, as you must have seen, Tuesday, this day dome has come live. That is from a consortium of Sahara Energy, This Day newspapers, and Kokavit. That is a consortium of banks supporting. And one of the things they gave us was a 54-gene mobile lab that will add to the testing capacity the territory has. We are actually going around taking samples and sending. And we test over 500 now in the territory per day. The challenge is the laboratory. You send those samples, and it's being done by the federal government lab at the NCDC managed lab. And so getting the results out is a challenge. So with this expert gene machine, we are likely going to see an improved testing capacity.
All right. I hope blame game doesn't come in here, Kingsley, because every state is complaining that the a certain percentage of people who are positive came from another state. You know, there are people who are moving from place to place. Abuja, of course, like you said, is central, and everybody comes in here. If you live in Kano or Kaduna and you have a house in Abuja, now that Kano is being hit hard by COVID-19, you relocate to Abuja, even if it means travel in the night and all of that. So every state is not saying that, look, yeah, people brought it in from, so where is it coming? It's still in Nigeria.
Yeah, big
that is not the truth.
Right.
Yeah, we have the text messages here. We have tweets here, Kingsley.
That's right. Helen Iyam tweets, I think measures should be in place to check interstate movement. Benue State so far has recorded 4 cases, aside the index infection. The remaining 3 as a result of interstate movement.
All right, the statistics, that's from Akeju Olabaju. The statistics show that since partial lockdown commenced on 5th May to date, the cases declined to just 71 as against 120 in just 3 days preceding. However, we need to appeal to the task force to improve on the care and management of patients to reduce mortality.
Okay, Ibrahim Bello says, excuse me, there hasn't been any clear-cut information regarding what is the actual cause of sudden increase in deaths in states like Kano, Jigawa, Bauchi, and Yobe. The pattern of death and the age of the people dying suggests it's not far from the novel virus.
Ruben Nabwere, the top priority of households across the states is food and daily satisfaction, not necessarily the fear of COVID-19. In Rivers, the governor has extended the lockdown to Sunday to enable residents make purchases of essential items. I commend the governor.
Aliu Muri, the situation in Taraba, my state, is that there is still a lot to be done in terms of educating and enlightening the people on the preventive measures. Many people don't use face masks or wash their hands to control this pandemic.
Steve Bond, 07, it seems that the interstate travel ban is a mirage as scores of people smuggled in trucks still troop into most southern states.
Now, Innocent Yawa James, Yobe State in particular has made its stand known. They have researched their way out traditionally, and it seems the best way to go for states is to help its researchers. How long does it take research drugs to be clinically certified?
Now, from Akimbo, our Festus, COVID-19 is our biggest national emergency in peacetime. Sadly, some state governors are playing politics with it. For now, state governors should keep their politics to themselves and work with the federal government to curb the spread of the virus in our country.
All right, we'd like to thank you for sending in your tweets to our discussion today. And on that note, we'd like to also appreciate all our guests from Kano. We're joined from our network center by Dr. Tijani Hussaini, who is the coordinator of the Kano State Technical Response Team on COVID-19. Dr. Tijani Hussaini, we'd like to appreciate you for being with us on the program today. From Ilorin, that's the Kwara State capital, via Skype, Professor Wale Suleiman, who is the Vice Chair of the Kwara State Task Force on COVID-19 and SA to the Governor. Deep thanks to you for being part of our conversation this morning. From our Ibadan Network Center, Dr. Taiwo Ladipo, who is manager of the Task Force team on COVID-19 in Oyo State. Deep thanks to you as well for being part of this conversation. Earlier, we signed off the Commissioner for Health of Yobe State, Dr. Ghana. He was part of this conversation. Here in Abuja, Dr. Mohammed Kawu, Acting Secretary of the Federal Capital Territory Health and Human Services Secretariat. So, Doctor, thanks a lot for being around. And as always, we thank our viewers for tuning in. The program returns same time tomorrow, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kieran Umayo. Thanks for watching and see you again.